WNBC. We always
Fuck
start
it.
with
We'll do it live.
yes, Howard Stern and Bill.
We'll do it live.
We're doing it live with Kristy Lowrey. Every time I think of your last name, I think of Bad Boys. Yeah, Mike Lowry.
I've considered, it's like, if I have a kid and it's a boy, should I do that to him? Name him Mike?
Go
Or
Mike,
will anyone? Will that be like a classic movie by the time my kid is like old enough?
Isn't it already? Bayhem?
I guess. Yeah, I guess so. But
I mean, it's a sort of a classic. Anyway, we were just saying off camera that this is the first time we've like spoken face to face and everything. I remember when we were out pitching our show, The Revenger. Where were you at? We were pitching somebody. And you were working there, and we were going to stop by, but we just got too busy with shit.
I was probably at Shades of Blue. Did you guys? Were you? I was at Universal, so I remember there was some sort of. I was in the UCP building or something. We were trying to like make it happen. So this was probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
And time flies. I have a 7-year-old now. He was probably like 1 then.
Oh my goodness.
Of course, that didn't go well. You've done pretty well in TV. What are you on now? Like your 4th, 5th series you worked on?
I am on it's like 6 seasons, but shows 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm on my 5th show if you don't count a mini room, which I don't count because That's
pretty solid.
I don't think anyone will say, yeah, I know. It's, it's one of those gigs where, I mean, like everyone said, it's a marathon. You spend all your time trying to like get through the door. And then once they let you in, it's a little tough at the lower levels because that's where everyone seems to be like bottlenecked in terms of like staff writers and that kind of thing. But once I kind of got over that hump, it seems to be going a little smoother for me, which I appreciate for my sanity.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like one of those things like the more success you have, the easier it gets, as with pretty much anything in this industry. Not easy, but easier.
Yeah, definitely people. I mean, the business is a little bit of resume snobs in the sense. So I think just seeing like, oh, other people hired her, she can't be crazy or terrible is like the logic.
That's our problem. The crazy, terrible thing is totally our problem. Well, we're here to talk about your favorite movie, which is...
Well, I want to talk about Hell or High Water. I'm one of those where like when you start saying favorite anything, I'm like, I cannot choose. And I'm not a big classics person. So I haven't seen a lot of the classics, admittedly, which I'm embarrassed about working in this industry. But also, I know a lot of people who are like into the classics, and they come off as movie snobs sometimes. So I'm not crazy about it. Sorry.
Well, and a lot of the execs you talk to, they don't know shit about the classics either. So
what's a running joke on this show too that we struggle with picking a favorite movie ourselves. Meanwhile, we have a whole show about asking other people to pick theirs.
It's like an inside joke.
I consider my favorites like what movie can I like sit down and watch over and over and over, and it may not be the best movie, but it's something about it speaks to me where I can just like it'll be halfway through on the cable and I'll be like, yeah, I'll sit down and watch the last half or the first half or all of it. And I've seen Hell or High Water many times, so it felt like a good in my wheelhouse, especially and if we're going to be talking about writing or anything, my brand it feels very much in my brand, so that'd be a good one.
It was kind of in our brand too, which is why we said we kind of love-hate Taylor Sheridan as far as just jealousy goes.
Are you familiar with our script Mechanicsville?
I've heard about Infamous. I mean, you guys have that. You have Hubris. You have, is it Revengers? Not Avengers, right? Like I've heard of, I don't know that I've read any of your guys' scripts, but I like know all their titles. I don't know if it's within our writing group. Everyone else talks about them, but yes, I've heard of Mechanics.
The only reason I mention it is because when this came out, Jay and I were like, because there's a lot of overlap. Like it's a script about a couple Texan brothers, but one's a bad seed type, the other one's more of a do-gooder type, and they rob a bank. I mean, it's very there's a lot of overlap. Yeah, in some ways, watching this again, I wish I could just merge the two because there's a lot of things in this that I wish we had done, and there's a lot of things in ours that I wish or that I think could be cool if it were in this story, like our villain, and
ours is a little more hyperbolic, I'd say. I mean, it's still grounded and shit, and that's what we always aim for is grounded and character driven, but it's just a little more beefy as far as just that's what turns us on when we write is louder characters, but the kind of shit I like watching is pretty spare and sparse and grounded like this. So it's
I feel like you guys are, at least what I've heard about, like everyone who talks about your scripts, like I feel like you guys like push the edges a little bit. It's like a little, grittier and that kind of thing, which Taylor Sheridan is, but very much if you look across his movies, they are very grounded and you feel like you're just like peeking into someone's life and there's not much that feels like too heightened about it. But
Yeah, none of the characters have the volume turned up that much in terms of dialogue or anything. We might chew a little more.
There's a couple little spots in there, like when they're interviewing the teller who was robbed, and they asked, what color were the robbers, and she said their skin or their souls, stuff like that, where it's a little bit
something like right,
but otherwise it has a lot of restraint, tons of restraint, compared to like
Winter's Bone does that too. Do you know if Taylor Sheridan is Southern? Is he a Southern boy or not?
I believe he is. If he's not born and raised in Texas, he at least lives on a ranch in Texas. But I think he like grew up partly in Texas. But I don't know if like if you look at his bio, I think he says he's from somewhere else. But I'm pretty sure he like spent a lot of time in Texas or grew up there, which is evident. And like if you look at a lot of the scripts, they are like reservation ranchy. I mean, like I don't know if you guys watch Yellowstone, which is one of my favorite shows, and it's
I've
not
seen
definitely
a bit of it. Yeah, it's cool.
It's not the best show out there for sure, but it's just like, man, I'm a
world
sucker.
is kind of
it's weird for someone who is an Asian woman technically, but I sound like man, I love a good flawed white guy like protag and cowboys.
Hey. We're right here.
Hey, I write them. I like
Cheers.
Them. Yeah.
It's a flawed white man.
Hey,
he was born in Texas. I just Googled him. Cranfills Gap, Texas.
Yeah, which you can feel in like his character. I mean, like what I'm always in, and I actually, you guys,
nice.
I'm
in honor of boxer. This is what the boys were drinking in the movie, Shinerbach, dude.
Oh, okay, I didn't catch
you guys are on. Oh wait, one of you's on West Coast time, one of you's on West Central time. I was like, I'm drinking Orange County tea.
We're animals.
Well, I got tea as well. I'm double fisting it.
I'm out of coffee, whiskey. So I'm like, I'll drink. My husband's like, are we British now? I was like, no, we don't have any coffee, so I need caffeine.
So your husband, he's an awesome guy, right? Because he took the dive with you. You guys made the move out with very little prospects at the time, and you just worked as like a writer's assistant and shit like that, right?
Yeah, we were literally both teaching at the time, which was not his career field. That was my first, like I went to college, tried to, I had a free ride. So I was like, let me get a normal degree, but I was like secretly closeted writing all through college. And so when I got out, I was a coach and math teacher. And he somehow like, he actually is a car guy. So he started a body shop, but he saw the prospect of like, they wanted to hire someone at the high school to teach vocational. And he's like, oh, teaching kids a trade skill, that'll be fun. Until we would come home and I'd be like, oh, my kids are talking while I talk. They won't listen. He's like, well, my kids are running around the shop swinging power saws and shit. I'm like, oh. Okay, I was like, you win. He's like,
my wife's a teacher. It is insane.
Oh my God.
I don't know how you do it.
Well,
you had power saws.
No, and hammers. I'm like, okay, well, that's dangerous. But no, honestly, teaching was a thing. I did it for 2 years. I was like, oh, my dad's a teacher. I was like, I can't do this shit for 30 years. I'm not going to survive. So I couldn't. It's underpaid and underappreciated. For sure. And this pandemic, I'm like, I don't know how all teachers are quitting, but no, yeah, we had no jobs lined up, had a little money saved, literally just like packed up our shit one summer and moved out to LA, which looking back was probably dumb, but I guess it worked out. So,
definitely worked out.
Yeah. But, and we kind of switched around. Like he obviously working in the car industry, like LA is great for that. Lots of cars, lots of people wreck. Like he had an easy
people with money to get custom jobs.
So he definitely supported me through the first half. And now we kind of flipped, now that I've kind of got my career up and going. And, I will say the TV industry pays pretty well. He quit like the corporate job at State Farm and decided to open his own restoration shop. So now he's kind of like, I'm the one who's like supporting his dream, which is kind of cool that we've been able to do that. So
totally. I see that Mustang he built. Looks ridiculous.
That is mine. Yeah.
That's yours, right?
That is mine. Yeah. No, he's got some cool projects in there. We literally have a 67 Scout truck we're delivering to Central California next week. Yeah. He's got some really cool shit in there. And it's all old cars. Like that's the thing, everyone else is doing just like collision repair. So I get to see some cool stuff happen.
Is he like updating the engines and shit in them, or are they leaving the original engines?
It's a little bit of everything. We have some people who want like bone stock, and then we have some who are coming in there like complete. They want him to do everything. He does a little mechanical stuff, but that's he's definitely more of the Autobot, like the body and doing like the metal work, but he will. I mean, he'll pull out an engine, drop it, but sometimes they also want to go to like their engine guy, and we're like, that's fine, because mechanical stuff for us is like, but we got like a 64 Impala, a couple of Mustangs up there, 52 GMC. We should just a bunch of, I mean, people up here, there's a lot of car people up here, so it's a good place to be just to like see what people bring in. So
the cars is one of the great grounding things about Hell or High Water, to bring it back to the movie. It's just the shit. What is he in, like an old shitty,
I know, like
80 something Bonnieville or some shit.
There's the, I guess it's like a 90s Ford Bronco too. It looks like a truck because it doesn't have.
I feel like she's gonna get like Marissa Tomei and My Cousin Vinny on us and shit. The Pots Attraction.
And also something I noticed about that too is that how this very much is like a Western kind of story. It feels like a Western, but it has like these, you know, like shitty, you know, family two-door coupes and stuff like that, you know, like just sprinkled through it.
It's like whatever they had around.
It's like much of the movie was about the, you know, old world passing away like that. It was that great moment when the rancher was driving his cattle away from the fire, and he said, "Here I am in the 21st century, running from a fire toward the river, you know, chasing cattle. And, you know, I wonder why my kids don't want to do this shit, you know?" So it was a lot of that, like, you know, so to speak to, like, you know, this, what otherwise could be just the Wild West with, you know, like more modern, you know, conveniences and cars and things like that sprinkled in, like the old world dying off. And
was that Taylor Sheridan? I know he played one of the ranchers. I don't know if that was his line. Did you get? Yeah, he's usually in all of his movies. He's one of the guys that rides up to the truck. Yeah, where Jeff Bridges and Gil Birmingham are, but I don't know if he's that one. Yeah, I think because he used to be an actor, so I think.
Yeah, that's the other reason I don't like him, because he like writes shit like us, but he looks like one of the characters that would be in it, where we look like the dude who would write it.
But all of his stuff is like, even Sicario, which is not set in like Texas necessarily, but all of his stuff feels like they feel like modern westerns. They're just not always set, you know. But I mean, which I think was like his thing with his trilogy. But yeah, I mean, what I love about what he does, and like Hell or High Water is a perfect example. Like, the plot is super simple. Like, there's nothing, like, there is a little bit of a reveal, like, why are they robbing the banks? And you come to find out about, you know, their ranch being foreclosed.
Which didn't have to be held back. You could have easily put that up front, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But I just like, really, you have, and he could have probably just went with like the two brothers and told their story, but I really like how he kind of split it in terms of like Jeff Bridges, here's the retiring Texas Ranger, and his, you know, unlikely partner, who I actually think they have, in my opinion, the more interesting arc or the relationship, because it is so like, it's very much a partnership of like, you know, that he's poking at him, but there's clearly like some respect and love there. And then obviously I don't want to spoil the ending for anyone, but that
no, we spoil everything here.
Oh, do you know, when Gil Birmingham gets shot, you're like, oh, you just feel that gut, because you're like, the way they left there, again, their relationship, it's like, I think, you know, Jeff Bridges took him for granted. But I'm curious what you guys think of the casting all around, because I've always said, I tell people I love this movie, but it's not that I have an issue with Chris Pine. It's just something about that role. I'm like, that could have been anyone, or he's too recognizable for me. Like, I love Ben Foster because I think he plays that role well, and he is recognizable.
Man,
totally.
And Jeff Bridges, Jeff Bridges is also very
amazing,
recognizable.
Always amazing.
But I don't know, Chris Pine is like the sticks out a little bit too much for me, and I don't know if it's just my own taste.
Movie star eyes.
Too good looking. Yeah.
When they try to scruff him up, I'm like,
this is my favorite role of his, I'll say.
Yeah,
really?
Agreed.
Yeah.
But I think that's just because it's like Captain Kirk and the dude in Wonder Woman and shit. Like, what else?
Well, that's what I picture.
Yeah.
That's what screws it up for me.
I mean, he carried it very well. I feel like he was pretty convincing acting wise. But I know what you mean. It just doesn't. I don't know.
Like,
he has a face destined for more.
Too pretty. He's just too pretty, right? Yeah. He'd already be in Hollywood or a rock star or some shit. I don't know.
Yeah, he does not sink into the role. Like I said, Jeff Bridges, I totally buy, like, you know, old salty Texas Ranger on retirement. Like, that is of his thing. But I don't know. I couldn't.
Dude, you're talking to people though who love casting movies with unknowns. We just did Blue Ruin with our boy Adam Barker. You know Adam, of course. And that's one of the things about those kind of movies. And Bubble that Soderbergh made, where he cast like the manager of the KFC and shit to be his lead, you know.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Or did you ever see Joe?
If you haven't seen it, you should definitely
by David Green.
Yeah, I saw Joe. I love Blue Ruin. I mean, I love all that, like Winter's Bone, Mud. Like, I don't know, what they call it? Rural Noir is what
basically rural noir, I think.
What's there's another term for
True
it.
True Detective is in that vein. Of course, No Country for Old Men, or sort of in that world. Yeah.
I love, so those are some of my and that's also what I like to write. So I'm typically drawn towards, and it's probably the setting, I'm sure, in some sense, but
yeah, we were drawn to that too, for sure.
Yeah.
And, well, again, though, like the Jeff Bridges, you could have cast a Ted Levine or some badass character actor that most people might be like, where do I know him from and shit, you know? Most not realizing he was Buffalo Bill.
That is definitely a phenomenon that I'm conscious of. I think most people are affected by, which is when you have, like, sometimes you'll have movies with like nothing but A-listers, and it's kind of like, you know, but then you see something like a Bub or Joe or whatever, where it's, you know, like what the reference with Jay was going to make with Joe is this guy Gary Paulson, who was like a homeless dude that they cast for this part, and he was amazing. And he died before it was even released.
I remember that.
Yeah, he never got to see it. He croaked before it was released, which is nuts.
Gary Poulter, right?
Yeah, Poulter. Yeah. Like Poltergeist. I wish he'd come back and haunt a movie of ours. That fucker was awesome.
No shit.
That's part of the problem with trying to make movies, though. Sometimes the only way you get it made is by putting a bunch of known faces in it that you get pre-sales on.
That's what gets attention.
And, you know, it's hard to make a movie with nobody in it.
I love a good unknown, even Blue Ruin, because that guy, he was known for, wasn't it like a different genre or something, or just
Macon Blair, dude? I don't know what.
Well, the same guys made a movie prior to that. It's called a Murder Party, I think. Yeah, and it was like a genre horror type thing, and it you know, was kind of whatever, like, you know, panned. Yeah. And this was Blue Ruin was their last ditch. They were like, all right, let's make a serious movie together.
Kickstarted.
Another simple but great, just like very simple plot, but just I don't know, just some. I love morally great characters. I find if I look across my phone, I'm sure you guys are very well in that brand. And I always wonder. It's funny because sometimes I think we subconsciously write. Like it took me a while. Like I wrote, you know, I'd written probably 10 or 12 projects, but then I realized at some point I was literally driving into probably one of my TV jobs or even my assistant job, and I thought, oh, like 4 or 5 of my pilots or scripts started with like a character returning home, like after they had failed. And I was like, oh, I must have a subconscious fear, and I do, about returning home a failure. But like I never set out to like tell that story, but just subconsciously you find
that was your fear of going to Hollywood and failing and having to return home in failure,
Arkansas,
manifesting itself.
Well, when you tell people, you know, you're from a town of 700 people, and you're like, I'm going to Hollywood to pursue a dream, they're like, oh yeah, good luck with that. You know, exactly. we'll be seeing you soon. And so, and I've always like felt that a little bit, not even before I left, like growing up there, chip on my shoulder a little bit. So yeah, but again, I wouldn't have acknowledged that when I was writing, but clearly some morally great characters too. And I'm sure we all look at ourselves this way. Like we all feel like people look at us like, oh, you're a good person. And then inside you're like, am I really? You know,
like the opposite. A lot of people think they're a good person and they're not.
Well, not me. So I find that my characters tend to be very kind of morally, you know.
Those are the only interesting characters to watch. Yeah. I mean, what are you doing otherwise, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I like Captain, you know, like actually I don't like superhero movies, but I get the one of like the Supermans or Wonder Womans. You're like, oh, they are good people, but I can't write those characters.
Right. At least Tony Stark's like a weapons dealer, so there's that moral.
Some pathos or something, you know. Yeah. I love just bad seed characters, you know, like this Ben Foster's character. There's nothing better, you know. It's just like they just give it this edge, and
you always find yourself kind of wanting to be that guy. It's like the Bender from Breakfast Club, the guy who's the rapscallion or whatever. Now sometimes it's taken to this murderous level and shit, like Ben Foster in this film, but at the same time, it's revealed that that was a better look for you, actually. At the same time, it's revealed that he's doing it all out of love to a degree, too, or he at least has looked at this as a thing that he was going to sacrifice himself in the end, you know?
Yeah, I forgot about that at the end where he's kind of like, you go and I'll take care of this. And it's like, I was like, oh, yeah, he clearly, you know.
That was a genius move, by the way, when he let he loaded the truck up with explosives or whatever it was, or kerosene, and let it just roll back down the hill into the fucking pursuers. I was like, maybe jealous when he was at revenge.
Yeah. That whole sequence, everything from like even just the shooting, I don't know, even the like I didn't realize how prominent the way they set up that pose after Jeff Bridges shoots Ben Foster, and just like the way he slumps over in his gun, they just kind of linger for a second.
Yeah,
like a great shot.
I noticed that too. The second viewing where the gun actually stopped his fall, so it was like propping him up. You know, that was an interesting touch. You know, almost like symbolic in a way,
Dude, how great was Jeff Bridges acting in the moment after shooting him? Just the reaction, how he slapped the dude.
Yes, I love that. That
just great, but then the emotion hit him, and the catharsis is not going to bring my friend back. It was all there without a word spoken. It was fucking amazing.
It's like celebratory and melancholy at the same time. Yeah.
And deep breath. And it was just, I forgot about that too. And I was like, man. And of course he's great, but you really felt like that's exactly how someone would have felt in that situation. He's good. He's so good. I want to bring up my favorite scene. Actually, this is not even my favorite scene in just this movie. This is a scene I've referenced to many people, and I don't know why it stuck with me, because it's one of those scenes you could cut from the movie and it would not make a difference.
Those are usually the best scenes.
Yeah,
I guess. But so when Jeff Bridges and Gil Birmingham go to sit at the diner across from the bank to wait, and the waitress comes up.
Yeah.
What
don't you want?
What don't you want? I've literally sometimes just watched clips of that, because and also my parents or my husband's parents used to own a restaurant in town, and so it feels very much of like, oh yeah, I know these types.
I had a couple great sassy waitresses in this.
And I just and I think she has a couple of credits, but I think it felt like one of those people they just actually pulled from a diner somewhere in Texas or wherever they were.
Gary Poulter their ass.
Yeah, but there's something that felt, as someone who's from the South, it just felt like the most authentic Southern scene or something for me. So it just gets me every time. I was like, I love this woman, and also have an affinity for older. Yes. Well, my last pilot, I wrote kind of that Frances McDormand kind of just rattlesnake, salty. Just older woman who clearly has lived a life and is does not give a damn about you. And there's something I just appreciate about it.
We had an epiphany with our show, The Revenger, when we had it going with the Weinstein Company before all Harvey shit went to hell.
Sure.
We actually had an epiphany as we were developing it with them. We're like, what if we make it the mom? And you get Frances McDormand just going on a warpath, but it's super realistically. She has to use her brain to take down 3 dudes. It's not about some woman running around kicking ass doing Krav Maga and shit, and they were like, let's just stick with the male lead. It's like, you fuckers.
And you think,
I'm down to co-write that one, because I would love to see fucking Frances McDormand with a bat wrapped in barbed wire. So I'm just the shit out.
It reminds me of our grandmother. She was kind of a no shit taken, older school, hard scrabble. There's a story of her husband, or I think it was her. I don't know. There's some guy in her life pulling a gun on her, and she's just like, "Go ahead, you ain't got the balls," and shit like that.
I tell my husband, we're in our 30s, which we arguably, hopefully, have a long time to live. But it's like, you know what? The more I look at old people like that, I was like, I get it. I get how you spend 30 years on this earth and you already feel a certain way. It's like, imagine spending 30 plus more years. How could you not get to a place where you're just fuck everyone, and I don't
doubly jaded,
the mule and shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially
I get
people
it.
from those earlier generations, where life was harder than we have it today. Let's admit,
Yeah,
most of life is getting your ass kicked. That's why it resonates so much with us. Like how Indiana Jones or John McClane, just by the end of the movie, they've gone through this gauntlet and gotten the shit kicked out of them, but keep getting up like Rocky. That's what life is for the most part. Is like Rocky says, it's getting up, seeing how hard you can get hit and get up and keep moving forward. And by the end of your days, I'm going to be a salty old Larry David meets Gran Torino without the racism.
Look forward to it. It sounds amazing.
Get off my lawn.
To backtrack on the Frances McDormand thing, have you guys seen Nomadland?
No, but I was just about to mention that because we got this thing where we challenge each other with movies on a little side thing, cinephiliacs, where we each bring a pick. So it's like a double feature, and it's usually completely insane mashups because they're random and we don't know. We surprise each other.
Party Monster and The Mission, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never seen those.
Go ahead.
But I was going to mention that film just because that's a film where she famously apparently cast a bunch of real nomads. And that's one of the things I guarantee that's resonating with people. We got to get away from this whole star stuff. I wish we could go back to more auteur shit and just bank on storytellers instead of stars,
Well, and it's more convincing because you don't have to get past the fact that you've seen this person in 50 other movies and you know the taxi driver character or whatever it may be, that you can just buy that this is really the person, like the camera's really in the room with the real individual and stuff.
Right. And acting.
Or you even forget the camera at that point.
acting itself. I mean, we just had a little roundtable we did with some of the Dead Poet Society cast members and shit on the show, which was amazing. Like Gail Hansen, Nawanda, one of the all-time great characters. And he talked about acting a lot, but sometimes I'm like, I saw an interview with Dave Mamet's daughter. You know, she was on Girls and shit. She's an actress. And she was talking about Dave Mamet told her, like, fuck acting school, fuck this, fuck that. He's like, show up on time, know your lines, and look the other guy in the eye.
Get out of your own way.
Be as truthful as possible. That's it. That's all you got to do to act. So I feel like sometimes getting the person from KFC and helping them do that with a small, intimate crew, which I think is key. I think if you got a big 100-person crew, they're going to be overwhelmed. But if you get a small little skeletal crew with some non-actors, I think you can weave some magic. And for some reason, it's, you know, it's just, again, it's millions of dollars at stake.
It's about getting marketing and budget, you know, a budget and, you know, investors and stuff like that.
But like, take some of the shows you worked on. You worked on Badlands, right? Mm-hmm. Who was the star in that? Was there a bankable star in that?
No, they're really, I mean, and I'm literally blanking on his name, Daniel. I mean, he's probably big in like Asia, but like, I think if you would ask like here in the, you know, Daniel Wu, I mean, he's been in some stuff now, but I don't think like if I put his picture up, he'd be able to go like, you know, or like Daniel.
A lot of TV is like that too. Yeah.
Right. TV. A lot of people didn't know who the fuck Gandolfini was before Sopranos.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. All those actors, no one were aware of any of them really. I mean, the occasional, you know, cameo, but later.
I think the show I did with the biggest stars and actually worked on set with them, and it is just different. Like in thinking about like, so when I did 911 Lonestar, I mean that was Rob Lowe and Liv Tyler. So I mean those are pretty, actually, at least for Liv, coming from, this was her first network show, so she's coming from like the movie world,
right?
And then Rob obviously has been around the block, you know, West Wing and you know, things like that. So it's like faces you can't unsee or unrecognize,
right.
But yeah, I do like, for one, just movies I feel like lack authenticity, especially that's why I hate like things that are set in the South. And when I watch them, I'm like, clearly this person is not from there. Yeah, it's so hard to watch. And they're, you know, like I think there are movies that do it well, but they're usually from the people like, so, you know, Winter's Bone felt very real to me. Mud, but I mean, you're talking about Jeff Nichols, who's born and raised in Arkansas, shot it in Arkansas.
Shotgun Stories.
Shotgun Stories. Yeah, David Gordon Green. He's from originally from Arkansas, but like the North
Carolinas.
Still, Nick Pizzolatto. I mean, I don't think he's from the South, but you know, I know he went to University of Arkansas. You know, and they've
spent some time and steeped in it and gotten that cadence of the dialogue. There's a couple lines in a lot of them. Even Winter's Bone, there's a couple lines that feel almost too arch Southern Gothic, like with this hillbilly method, really say that shit. And you know, true what's it called? True Detective, of course, has some of that in it.
Yeah. It's very poetic and
exactly.
You know, sometimes
it's sort of genre, different, its own genre where it can get, you know, overinflated in those respects. Yeah.
Sometimes I think that, and then sometimes I'll catch my husband saying something so Southern that is so like cliche, and I'm like, I guess
it's all like a pot of neck bones.
Yeah, he uses Southernisms and colloquial. I'm like, okay, I guess fine.
I love that shit. That's the best.
Yeah.
But,
yes.
I'm saying the ones that aren't cliches though. Almost.
Right.
Like
that are lesser known, like to most
cliche,
people. Exactly.
Not. I don't know. That's a thing for us though, because believe it or not, we don't sound like it now, being military brats moving around, but we're Southern boys at heart, you know.
I graduated high school in Georgia.
He went to high school in Georgia. Virginia is where I graduated. Southern enough, but
our parents live in Texas, and our original father was there as well in Galveston.
What part of Texas?
They're in San Antonio.
Okay.
So it's not quite West Texas like this was set in and everything. But our natural dad, I don't know if you didn't know that whole story, but we had lost him for like 30 years, and then our twin sisters he had after us found us on Facebook, and we went to meet him before he passed away a few years ago. A couple times we went out there, and he was in Galveston.
I think Jay, you were posting about it, Tom, so I remember following it just through your social media posts, which was kind of super cool. But
that informed Revenger a lot too, because we had the Revenger in our head is just this idea of what if this old alcoholic motherfucker found out his son was a wannabe superhero and got killed, and the dad finds like the lair with all the gear and shit, and he starts using it to get revenge on the guys who killed his son, you know? So, that's cool. But we just been kicking it around. But when we went to visit him in Galveston, oil country, pirate country on the Gulf and shit. It's basically Louisiana's western half, you know what I'm saying? So that's where like this is where we set this story. So it's super Southern fried too.
He had a property with, you know, a bunch of trailers on it that he would rent out. And I was like, how do you find tenants? Do you like advertise somehow? We said, no, just people roll by and go, hey, you renting one of those? You know,
like dudes on the land,
people like off the grid, you know, on the land.
Yep. Yeah.
He had a Jolly Roger and a Confederate flag.
Yeah, I was going to say, they saw his pirate flag and
right.
Confederate flag
might have sold him. Who knows?
Safe haven.
You know, it is.
Exactly.
I think people forget. I think post 2016, definitely we realize we live in two different Americas, but I think people forget how entrenched, especially some of those rural places are in just the culture and decades. Like no one forces them to change. So why, like the things around them just slowly, or Confederate flags, like, hey, that's.
Well, to them, it's not even a bad thing though.
No, they just, it's
a source of pride and
exactly. You know, they don't associate it with the evils that the horrors that other people do. You know, that
some do, but most don't.
Yeah, I wrestle with a lot of that.
I don't think Butch did.
Because obviously Hollywood is very, at least in the TV world, it's hard to speak to like individual writers and features, but it's a liberal bubble, which is kind of it's dangerous in its own sense, because
it is,
I hear some interesting, like just very progressive, and then you know, obviously with everything going on post 2016 and that 4 years that we all survived, I think just hearing what they thought of, like, again, the basket of deplorables and all that. I was like, man, if you knew these people, that's easy to say, right? But if you knew these people, they're hardworking, honest, and you could argue that you don't know what you don't know, but some of them do believe that. There are some shitbirds there, and I'm not going to defend them. But and then you talk,
by the way,
shitbirds. Yeah, I picked that up at FBI. I love it. One of the writers says it a lot. I was like, I'm going to use that. But in the South, same thing. Like I've been called like, a California liberal idiot. I'm like, why? Because I moved to California, and you assume. I mean, I would say I'm definitely. My dad was a Southern Democrat as a redneck, so I already had a weird.
People.
They do. He's a unicorn. I mean, he's actually. I wasn't so much a military brat, but he met my mom stationed in Korea. It's obviously how this happened.
That's why your whole demographic is no stranger to us. The Asian with the Southern accent, we have seen it over and over growing up as military brats. So.
Yeah, my mom lives outside DC, and when I went to visit her, I realized all my friends were half Korean, and all of our moms Korean, and all of our dads were in the military. It took me like a hot second to realize, oh, that's a thing about men being stationed there, married, and coming back. And a lot
of Southerners join the military, so you end up with a lot of.
Yes. Yeah. My dad is, I think of my dad as like a redneck sitcom dad, like he used to be a drill sergeant too, very loud voice, very ranty.
That must have been interesting growing up.
Yeah. He lives in the backwoods. Like he gets no phone signal. He literally walk across the street. He's on his deer lease. Lake is down the road. Like he is a redneck through and through. And so, I grew up as a redneck.
Nice.
But
you still enjoy that shit, mudding and what are you gigging for frogs?
Gigging.
I don't love to hunt.
Noodling.
That's something about killing animals is not my forte. I love to fish. I will hook a good fish and release it. But I love to fish. Not a big hunter, but playing golf with them. I'm still a big golfer. I like mudding. Yeah, we like trucks and.
You listen to country music?
I'm a country music fan. A classic rock too. I mean, my dad. I grew up on 90s country.
How's that go over
rock.
In the writers' rooms and shit?
I can't get anyone to talk to me about country. They're like, unless it's like Garth Brooks.
Which is sad because you know what? What genre of music has better storytelling?
Right.
Country music's it for storytelling.
It is.
I'm sure that's a lot of what you bring to the writing too, is this other world that you're from that, you might not expect, and the influences you have from all that.
I think definitely in terms of people want to see, for one, when they read you on the page, a strong voice. And I get told that a lot. I've actually been told I have a masculine voice, which I don't know how to take. I'm curious if you guys have a take on that. I know that you never read my writing, but sometimes people, they're like, we don't look at the writer, and they'll read, I wrote a Western, and that's gotten me a lot of jobs. And they're like, I'll go back to the beginning, and I realize you're a woman. It's weird because you have such a masculine voice. And I'm like, thank you. I don't know what to think about that, but it is a strong, I'm sure, coming from the South, it is a male dominated kind of, I don't know. I've somehow picked that up. I've always been surrounded by men, I guess. I don't know. I guess my inner voice is
Westerns in
masculine.
general, that code, that forthrightness, that man on a mission, revenge, all the themes that concern themselves, or Westerns and genres like that concern themselves with, are kind of, I guess you would say, masculine. But that whole thing is silly. It's like, it's so great when fucking what Frances McDormand goes off instead of Clint Eastwood. You know, what is
all
this?
getting shattered more and more now anyway, that idea.
We all have the same feelings. Like a woman would want the same kind of retribution if her son got killed as the dad would, you know. It's
yeah,
characters like the girl in True Grit or Ozark. If you've seen the show Ozark, you know, I think her name's Ruth or something.
Yeah,
you know, they have these kind of like hardened, you know, they were surrounded by like
Winter's Bone
redneck guys. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, maybe it is a thing. Maybe it's like, again, and sometimes it's when I show up in the room, they're like, oh, I did not expect a petite-looking Asian woman to have written this, which fair enough. Like, talk about my life being a contradiction and the way I look and the way I sound and all those things. But
I think so many lives are, and people just don't. See, I almost hate it when people talk in those terms, masculine, feminine, what I expected. It's like, how about you just approach it a priori, as Kant would say, or whatever, and you just take it for what it is. And I'm curious to meet the person who wrote this without assuming all these things about them based on what was written. I don't know. But
I think people are intrigued by the background because, for one, I don't find a lot of people come from the South and enter the business. And if they do, they're from like Dallas, Atlanta, and fine, those are in the South, but I would argue they're very different from like your rural places in the South.
For sure.
So yeah, I think, but it's funny, the shows I've worked on, it's not like my background like lends themselves. It's like, again, my first show was 12 Monkeys. That was a time travel sci-fi, and they read a Western, which arguably genre, but like, you know, working on the FBI right now, it's like, it's FBI agents in New York, you know, Lonestar firefighters. I've met on stuff where it's like, you know, set in Hawaii and like things that like my background does not lend itself to, but clearly
if you're imaginative enough, and you know,
I like that. I don't like just matching identities and representation and background to everything. It's important as representation is, and
that's
even
part of the fun of writing.
What's your advice to fat, ugly, cis, heterosexual white males trying to get into a writer's room these days? Don't bother.
Are we doomed?
No, you know what I will say? I think it's hard. I think, you know, I find the industry, you know, trying to make up for lost time, but also
I'm not sure I want to anyway at this point.
Yeah, you know, I also, I mean, I think there are probably cable shows you guys would be great for, but I don't know that like you guys should be trying to get on network. What I know of your
no interest.
All the times our agents tried to send us on that, we're just like, don't bother, bro. We had a couple meetings at the CW. We're like, what the fuck are we doing here? Can we get on Archie or whatever it's called?
That's amazing. You guys could do like Ozark or like even Yellowstone. That'd be like,
I mean, we've sold TV. We definitely bring in. They just never
element.
Get bought.
I will say the TV writing, you know, it's gotten more competitive. I think for one, just like, I think with social media, people for one just find out it's a job, but then, you know, you can do it from anywhere. So I've seen this like influx of people trying to get it. It is hard to get to the door because it is such a like everyone at the bottom, you know, and the white man thing. I mean, it's tough because I get it. Like I said, I think the industry is kind of overcorrecting, but not in the best ways. Again, what we really need is like people of color, women at the upper levels. Because, you know, I've been on these staffs where it's like, I've been either one of two women or one of two people of color in a sense, and everyone else above me will be, you know, white. And it's like, well, if you have a show, whatever, like Badlands, you know, if your main character is Asian, it's like, oh, we have Asian representation, but like, yeah, at the staff writer level, the person who has the least amount of say in the room. So there is a sense of this, like, I think not back padding, but sometimes it is for the statistics.
It can feel like tokenism almost, or like we check the box of
especially on casting. Like the more visible it is to the public, that seems to be where it happens the most, right? Because it is sort of or you know, trying to you know, appeal to that, you know.
Exactly. And visibly. You know, we need more like in front of the camera, behind the camera. I mean, like obviously it represents the country we live in, but you know, I guess you have to start somewhere. So I get when you have your one spot left, it's like, well, let's hire someone, you know, a woman or a person of color. And then, you know, I've heard this from, I have a lot of white guy friends. It's like, they feel like there is no spot for them. So I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I still believe in a sense that like truly good writing will at least get you somewhere or get you to the top of at least a read pile, whether they actually hire you. Because sometimes, you know, a runner may want you, but that studio network is where they'll step in and say, hey, we need people of color or whatever.
Well, some of the budgeting for staffs, I don't know if this is still the case, would come out of like the HR diversity hire budget, so it doesn't even count against the show's budget and shit. So then there's a financial incentive to diversify, which is good. Again, but
it is.
And this isn't white guy bitching. We don't give a fuck. We wouldn't even fit in a writer's room anyway.
No. I think, I don't know that. I think like something that was super like again, very specific for you guys. Like, you guys would be a great addition, but I definitely think there would be some settings you guys would be like, no, fuck that. I don't need that.
I was in some of those WGA groups on Facebook of all WGA writers, and I was like, there's no way I could do it'd be an endurance test for me, because so many of them though get caught up in arguments about what was said instead of what was said, and it's a lot of policing each other and shit. I'm like,
it's a sensitive bunch, which I have trouble with too, again, from someone from the South, where typically everyone speaks unfiltered. I even sometimes feel like I need to watch, and again, I feel like I'm pretty progressive, again, not as progressive as like I see some people here who are so far left. You know, I think I'm pretty in the middle, which I think is where most of America is, but I'm sometimes have to be careful about what I say, because sometimes I'm also very like cavalier about stuff. I like to joke. I have a, you know, my sense of humor is sometimes dark, and I'll say like shit that like you maybe wouldn't think would come out of the mouth, but again, that could offend someone in the writer's room, or if you ask the wrong question. So, which I hate tiptoeing around, but also I'm like, hey, I'm not trying to rub people the wrong way and lose my job.
Die on that hill. So
that's why I just want to be part of it. I don't even want to
to have to walk on the eggshells at all in the first place.
It feels like snake handling or something at this point, where because that should be the one place where you're like assigned, you know, like in the UFC. In that show, The Ultimate Fighter, Dana White had put this sign over the door that said, don't leave it in the hands of the judges. And it's like that constant reminder. If I had a writer's room, I would want to put in there, like, try your damnedest to not get offended by anything. Because I want to hear every idea, no matter how outlandish, fucked up, boundary pushing, provocative. It's like you want them all in the hopper.
So I think there are those.
It all needs to come down to intent, you know, is your intent to be hateful or harmful or what have you? But if it's something that is more in the spirit of, you know, imagination or humor or other things, you know, then it should be free game if you're not actually coming from that
writers place, of all people,
a hateful place, you know.
When writers start policing each other on content,
especially like when the villains themselves have to be defanged, you know, Jay and I talk about that all the time, that like even the villains we're so afraid of triggering that, you know, well, they're the bad guys. They're supposed to do things that you should be triggered by what they're doing, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are those rooms out there. Like, so they probably live more in the more cable artistic, or even the mini rooms. You know, sometimes these cables that have shows that have 10 episodes, you know, they may only have a writer's room of like 4 or 5 people. And I think whenever the show is able, whether because of its setting or topic or whatever, can push them out, I think those tend to be a little more loose, because they want the people to like, hey, be honest. But again, I've been in network a little more. So those, we're not generally just writing gritty stuff or topics in which we have to dig into that. So it just doesn't
more
come up
fun,
a lot.
You know, action.
I haven't even read you.
Yeah, just, you know,
I think I've read a bit of your stuff years ago, but if you don't want notes, I'll read whatever you want to send.
We should trade. Like, so I've heard of, like, literally I can name probably I guess I named like 3 or 4 of your projects. So I've heard of them. It's just,
I'll send you some shit, some good Southern fried shit. But the thing is, you, Adam Barker, I already know a couple of people just personality-wise, background-wise, profile-wise, that I would put on the staff. It's almost like casting, again, non-actors. I don't need to read you if I know you're cool, you're on the level, you think the right way, whatever. I don't...
and writing's a little bit, or at least TV is a little bit, it's like the baseball team analogy. It's like, you know, you don't want 10 pitchers. You don't want 10 first basemen. You know, you want...
intellectual diversity.
Not even background and all that, but TV, there is a sense, you know what, there's sometimes a good thing if you have an experienced person who understands structure, which, like, structure is one of those things I hate to talk about, because I never walk out of a movie and go, oh man, the structure was really great in that movie. Exactly, but in TV, like, less so in cable again, but like, to have someone who is really good at breaking story or pitching ideas, like just having a little bit of diversity in what your skill set is.
It's like an A-team, you know, you got the master of disguise, you got
the demolitions guy,
the strong man.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you kind of put all your, as we say, superpowers together, and hopefully you get the best product out of it. But I think, you know, that's what I tell people, you know, again, and how I get a lot of these jobs. I talk to a lot of people and they're like, oh, you know, you have to know someone on the show to get a job. I was like, maybe you do, but that has not been true of my experience. I feel like I'm one of those rare people. My reps just like, however they pitch me, I don't know, because again, I don't know how you look at a show like either the FBI or Lone Star. Well, Lone Star was set in Texas, so I get that, but like FBI and be like, hey, I've got this redneck Asian, like, she'd be perfect for your show. Like, I don't think those conversations are happening, but in terms of like, I've helped staff on the show, and sometimes literally you'll get like 200 scripts for 2 spots. and you're just having to like grab one and read. And again, you get to the end of that day or the end of that week and you're like, okay, what are the 10 I remember? And I think that's kind of what I've built my career on so far, because again, I don't know anyone. I can't call ahead and be like, hey, can you like pick up my script from that pile of 200 and read it and get me ahead somehow? My
That's a gross way to do it anyway. It's got to be a meritocracy or the shows suffer, which I think there's evidence of that too.
Does seem to be happening.
Yeah. So I'd like to, I'm confident in my writing skills. Again, I don't think I can write. Don't hand me an Avengers movie. I'm going to fuck it up. But I think again, when we write our own samples, it's like you write the thing you want to write and put out into the world. So to me, that I'm doing my best work. And I think people see that in a sense, and they want you to bring that to their show, whether it's actually a 1-to-1 correlation of like, oh, you're from the South. Again, we're writing in New York City, but bring that like character work or that dialogue.
Yeah, you bring a different element to it that would be unexpected. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The representation thing is funny too, though, because it is weird. It's like, we're going to bring on a Black woman on staff. Great, right? Diversity. But does she now speak for all Black women? Because that's a weird thing. You know what I mean? It's like no one speaks for their whole demographic. So
I hear people being put in those situations, like, and again, that's why,
like you said, the higher up is what needs to change more than anything, you know?
Yeah, and they sometimes look at you to be like, okay, well, what? And it's like, again, technically, if you want, and this is sometimes where I always feel straddled, you know, am I Southern or am I Asian? And the truth is, again, I named my S corp this. It's like, I am both. I am a redneck Asian. But to look at me and like expect, you know, what do all Koreans think or what do all Asians think? Again, because of my experience, I was like, I don't know,
it's
because
entirely different from what a person who grew up in
Korea. It's an unfair burden to put on this writer to represent their whole race. It's like Jesse Owens at the Olympics or some shit. Like, fuck off.
I mean, the ideal is we are all individuals, right? That's the ideal, that you're judged on your individual merit and your own experiences, etc. Yeah.
And storytellers who are supposed to find the universality of the human experience, like we should be able to write beyond these boundaries, you know. And of course it's not bad to check in, but I even have friends who are like, well, I want to get some female readers. Well, you gave notes, you and Kristy LeBlanc gave notes to our buddy Nate, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, so all right, you got female feedback, but again, do they speak for all women and shit? It's kind of silly to me, the whole thing. But
I think Willis might speak more for. No, I'm just kidding. For women.
I love Jeff Willis.
Jeff had good notes.
He always does. And actually, thanks to you guys for getting his script in shape, because we went in on the second round with Adam and it was a fucking pretty good read. So thank you.
Oh, good.
I hate reading
did you guys
people's
record?
first drafts.
Yeah,
he's putting that episode out next week. I think.
I'll have to watch that. Yeah, I wanted to read the second draft, but I'm still busy at FBI. So
because I don't even want to read my own third, fourth draft and shit eventually. You know what I mean? Like, so like it's kind of actually a good model to say it's a different group for each draft. You know, so it's not.
And I certainly don't want to read someone's first draft. That's why I was saying thanks again to you. You took the bullet.
Thanks for taking the hit. Yeah, we'll take one for the team.
We were just talking to Tom Schulman we had on an episode a week or two ago, who won the Oscar for the script on Dead Poet Society, and he was saying the same. We talked a bit about craft, and he was like, don't bring it to me till you've read it 15 times.
Well, Nate said he thought that we didn't rewrite often, and we actually do. We just don't bring it to other people until, you know, we feel like it's solid, you know, even the
we don't ask anyone for notes ever. There's the two of us. We write what the fuck we want.
I certainly don't.
Yeah, that's great. I need outside eyes. Yeah. I usually do like 2 or 3 drafts and call it a first draft, and then I'll do 2 or 3 drafts more for my friends and then send it to my reps and still call it a first draft. So,
right.
You know.
Yeah, right. There's that too.
I'm curious, can we talk about like, do you guys read for notes a lot? Or like if friends reach out to you? Or, I mean, I'm not reading a lot these days either, but I guess in the past, like if you
people know to not even really come to me. Yeah, sure not. I do mostly.
I'd be scared.
I'm the social network.
I have a lot of guilt in some cases over that, but
don't.
I'm the worst. I will offer to read, and I'm like, oh, why did I do that? Or if anyone, like a stranger off the street, could ask me, I'd be like, yeah, I'm getting myself in a bind. But no, I had this thing where like, you know, on social media, it's very much. And look, I think, are you on Twitter, Jay, or do you just on?
We just signed back up for Twitter because we had a CACTUS JACK coming out, but we have like 130 followers or some shit.
I feel like I rant. I rant to friends about this. I don't rant on Twitter because I don't want to be those people. But like, I see a lot of like the writer community, which is great. I love that there's a writer community. But it's like, I read my friend's pilot and it was so great and amazing. I'm like, well, I don't know. I hold the words like great and amazing in high regard. To me, again, I've read
like
hundreds
Louis C.K. with hilarious.
Yeah, I've read hundreds of scripts, and I remember like 10 or 12 of them I would call great or amazing. And I don't think any of them, unfortunately, are like
like 13 after you read our shit, but that's all right.
Yeah.
You need to reserve it for us. Yeah.
Like, I've read some really good stuff from my friends, but, either stuff I was like...
Well, here's my thing. Most of that, you get diminishing returns with each read or whatever. What I try and do and help people now is tell the story they set out to tell. And it's like, if you told, you don't really need notes that much. I mean, maybe
we
you
have such an auteur spirit. But... Yeah. Like, it's like, to me, the more unpolluted or the, distilled version is the best, even if it's flawed and has all these warts and shit. It came from the mind of this, like, whatever, this madman or whatever, you know what I mean? Or woman.
Focus testing and everything is essentially what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
For all these notes.
Defangs it. Yeah. Just let it be what it is. I mean, that's what a novel is. I mean, they might have editors and stuff, of course, with some ideas, and, so that's basically maybe one read from someone you trust.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, but...
Yeah. I definitely try to, help people get their script to, whatever it is their vision is. But I'm also very honest with people. I'm very hard to please. And I don't know if that's because I've read a lot, but I also have a high standard. Like, again, those scripts that have that special sauce, I'm always looking for that, because you remember those, you feel those, like they bring something like evocative to the page, which is really hard to do, but is also something I chase in my own writing. But I just tell people, I'm just like, this... I think sometimes it's to our detriment to like pat all of our friends on the back or whatever, to be like, oh, it's great. Right. It's this and that. I was like, because while we want to encourage them, we want them also to remember we're all in the business where we're competing not only against each other, but with like, the people who have been doing this for 20 years. You're sometimes competing for those jobs or in TV and whatever. So, I always tell people, I was like, look, here's the thing. If we're all great, let's just say we just make that thing. We're all great. We're all amazing. I was like, by definition, then we're just all average. And that's a problem in this business, because I think you need to be an you need to be an outlier, whether that's like an outlier,
different, if not better or something.
Yeah. And that doesn't always mean like your scripts are like Aaron Sorkin or whoever you want to say that much better. Sometimes if you're just writing in a voice that no one else is, or
it's unique
topics, you just need to be unique and be your own thing. Cause that's what I've found. And again, I'm not saying that I am that, but like, I feel like in my TV career, I've gotten that sense of like, again, being pulled out of a pile of 200. I have nothing in common with the show in terms of my background, but clearly people want to meet me based or they've read my script and they want to meet me. So it's like, just by my writing, there's something they sense in there. So I always tell people to like, think of it that way. Like, look, take encouragement from your friends, but don't let it get to your head, because it is a hard industry. Cause I think I run into writers like, oh, but I'm a good writer. My friends told me so. I'm like, okay, well, again, it's a really hard business.
My mom loves my songs. So you got Simon Cowell and shit. Like,
yeah, it's like,
some of you are seeking validation, though. That's part of the problem. Two things. First off, the validation is what they're really after. And secondly, it kind of does get watered down. Like you said, that original whatever voice you had, if you keep going out for rounds and notes to all these people and you start workshopping it, eventually it's going to feel pretty normative, because it's going to have been brought into whatever the standard definition of acceptable or marketable or saleable is. You know what I mean? A lot of it's so much fear-based. Oh, you can't do that. No one's going to buy that shit, so pull it out or whatever. It's like, no, that's all the goods, man.
You iron out all these wrinkles, and the wrinkles, meanwhile, are what give it texture,
For sure. My best samples that have served me best I've done the least amount of drafts on. The things I've rewritten into like oblivion, they're fine, but they never they just don't have that thing, that rawness. I think that's usually what I try to do in my first draft, is like no outside sources, just like, what is my gut tell me to write? And a lot of those scenes will stay intact to a sense, because they are the most like raw and real. And then, I can fix like structure and some of the like other stuff rewriting, but there is that sense of just like, you set out exactly what you meant to do on the page when you started.
In talking to you, I'm not sure how to take this, because Jay and I will also get a ton of meetings off of our writing, but then nothing goes anywhere after the meeting. So how should I take that?
No,
it's actually the meeting that threw it off the rails.
I have to buy a comb.
You guys are like mostly, you guys have sold TV projects, but you guys are mostly, do you consider yourself feature writers, which is like, to me,
we haven't written a feature in years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay, our last couple things have been TV
and novels and made a movie and shit, but
right.
I think though, we've been saying if we go back to anything, maybe spec a feature a year or something, but I don't know. Do you spec features at all now, or are you just entrenched in TV and don't have time?
to my whole point about what I think about my content, I've never sold a feature script. So there is also that, which is like, how can I? So yes, I do. I try to write one every year. I did not last year, but I do, because there is still an appeal about movies, which is like a beginning, middle, and end in an hour and a half or whatever, in a way that TV sometimes just gets exhausting because you're just going on and on and on with the story.
I've equated it from dating versus marriage. Like TV is a commitment. With a TV show, with it, you can, you're just dating and throwing people away and swiping right and swiping left on movies,
So but I feel like I keep writing these features that no one wants to buy, and then I don't know what to do with that.
Have you thought about trying to make one? I mean, you write small little Southern fried neo noir. You could pull that shit off.
I don't, me myself, that again, I think I spent so much time like literally just typing on a computer and understanding like how to write them. After that, even still to this day, I'm like, I don't even know where to like start in terms of like, do I fund it myself? I really don't want to direct at this point. Maybe like 10 years from now, that's something I want to do. But like,
you're still young, you son of a bitch. We're so old and crusty.
Hey, there's I know that I think LA loves the whole youth thing. But I was like, you know what? There's something to be said about experience and living a life, in which like the 20-something-year-olds that I encountered.
LA's infatuation with youth is a problem, if you ask me, and that's not just as an old guy.
No, it is, and it should not be, because they're like, oh, I was still like partying and doing cocaine at your age. I'm like, well, I live by the Southern standards, which like by your 30s, you should be like married, have a job, kids, and like coasting for the rest of your life.
I thought you were going to say instead of cocaine, it's meth.
Meth, yeah. No, meth in the South, yeah, heroin, pills, whatever. But no, I tell people, it's like, I'm on a timeline, like, that's why I got started so early. I started writing at like technically 17, but I'll say 20. I was like, I felt like I had to hurry and get to this point. And they're like, and so I don't remember your original question, Jay, but
neither do I. That happens often. I also have no idea how far we are from that rude buzzer. Sometimes it rescues you if you feels like it's right around
the corner.
It's like close, a minute or two. But do you guys keep chatting after the recording stops?
Sure,
there's like secret chatting.
Ryan Jackson has hung
we've
out
had
for like
some go for hours after. And we considered doing an overtime, which we did do with the Dead Poets thing at the request.
That one was about 2.5 hours long, but we had 3 cast members in the house.
Had
to keep it going. Yeah, it's special.
An hour is not enough.
This is with 42 subscribers, mind you.
Hey,
I don't know how we pulled that off, but people subscribe, please, because we're talking about doing a live reading, a la how they did with Fast Times at Ridgemont High, of Dead Poets Society with original cast and shit, but you need 1,000 subscribers to live stream. So please subscribe, you dicks.
Make it happen.
That's our problem. We alienate the people who would like us.
Right. We insult them. That's
what happens in the meetings we go in.
You fucking losers. It's just one fucking click, you assholes.
I feel that deep down.
So would this be your desert island movie? If you were stuck on a desert island, what would your choice be? If you had to pick one movie.
Man. That would be so hard for me. I think I might would have a show I could do.
A show? That's cheating.
No, is it?
It has to be a movie.
It's got to be one movie you watch over and over.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay, this is going to come out of nowhere, but one of my favorite movies growing up as a kid, I love Bring It On.
All right.
You know what?
Cheerleading,
I can see how that would cheer you up on an island. You're depressed, you're lonely.
It's just one of those movies. It feels timeless, and it's not even in my brain. That's why I was like, "This is going to be a curveball." Because, like, look, I can watch Hell or a lot, but I think at a certain point. But there is a sense of like
on an island by yourself. Yeah, how many times
can you kill yourself?
Shit, right? I would be depressed. Like, I think that's the thing. The repetitives. You want something that's a little lighter, or like you can like find moments. And no, that one I don't know. I just remember watching as a teen, and like I think Jessica Bendinger does like whatever that fine line of like team comedy but not being, I don't know, that movie just feels like it is kind of its own thing. And I thought about doing that for this. I was like, I'm
gonna make that a suggestion now for our little double features now. Bring It On.
I'm not gonna make these guys talk about Bring It On.
I don't know if I've even seen it.
My wife is watching it. I know I've watched her watching it, and there's been a couple moments where I'm like, all right, that was a good satirical line. You know what I mean? I can't even describe. If you look at my movie collection, it's all over the place. There's shit you would never imagine I'm into. So if something's good, it's good.
Right.
I don't know if it just, there's nostalgia has a power. Nostalgia has a power too, which I think we could all agree. Like when you watch music, movies, it takes you back to a time and place that which you cannot write that into anything, no matter how hard you tried. So something about it just takes me back to like my teens, which I think is all formative for all of us. But
I think that's part of the appeal of the Southern milieu to us is the nostalgia fact that we grew up around those people, and we haven't lived. I mean, we lived in Boston, we lived in Milwaukee, Europe and shit.
Well, we were in the South, and then we got whisked away to the Philippines for 3 years, and that was definitely a culture shock. You know, I was 12, Jay was what, like 8?
Wow.
Spent a few years there, so yeah, it was definitely. But I think it definitely helped inform us as writers. You know, that we that age got to see something completely different than what we had grown up in.
And again, the military is kind of Southern. I mean,
even there, on the bases in the Philippines and stuff. Yeah,
there's a shit kicker aspect to the military.
So I met.
Sure.
Well, partly the reason people sign up is because they're from economically depressed, areas, or that's.
Yes, very big in the South. Yeah, college. My dad, case in point, in order to go to college, he had to go to the military first. But I was on a show called Absentia on Amazon, and we it was an FBI show, but we had this guy coming who was a consultant. He's like.
You're alone, right?
Yeah. Is it cool if I start filming now?
No, when we get inside. Why are you here?
I just thought it was really interesting, that someone hasn't left their basement in 6 months, not even to use the bathroom. Is that true?
Why would I want to go out there? I got everything I need right here. That's what's wrong with most people. They're weak-willed pussies and parasites who buy into that whole "it takes a village" bullshit. You know how many aliases I've used calling into radio shows? I've had it up to my goddamn gills with the systematic feminization of this country.
Of course we want you. Get your own damn show if you think you got that much to say.
You live in your mom's basement.
Get down! Fuck you! What's so special about my loser son?
You really do hate your own mother.
She's a woman. Why wouldn't I?
There's some disconnect there, and if I can find it, what is hate? Where does it come from? Where does it go?
You want to know what gender you are? Reach down the front of your fucking pants and shoot fucking kite. Black Lives Matter. Do you call horses slaves? Liberal fucktard. Enough with the parades and the rainbow flags.
Dude, this guy's... it's like pure hate, man.
I want to see something really fucking cool.
This guy is a fucking animal. He's got himself on a leash. He's itching to get off that fucking leash. And he's gonna fucking kill some people.
What a fucking show. Stop! What do we hear? Look at me! Look at me! We're gonna help you show them the light. We're gonna change the world. This is Cactus Jack coming to you live from a studio audience.
To the man who calls himself Cactus Jack, we have watched as you have rocketed to infamy.
And you wonder why these cornered animals lash out. Pick a fucking side.
And now, we have watched as you have called for literal blood.
I know you're out there listening. It's buzzing in your ears, burrowing into your brain. Do it.
Jack, you're gonna love this. I pulled that trigger on that motherfucker's head.
Your VPN will not shield you. The darknet will not hide you. You and your kind are finished.
You think I'm scared of you? Come and fucking get me! Might I be your neighbor? Neighbor?